Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Jack stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with his cell phone in his hand, the sunlight spilling lazily over him, but not driving away the haze in his mind. Just moments ago, a phone call completely tore apart his otherwise peaceful life. The man on the other end of the phone, with undisguised smugness in his voice, taunted with a victorious demeanor. "Do you really think she'll come back? You're just a chaperone." Jack struggled to control his shaky voice and replied as calmly as he could, "Look at the deed again." After that, he hung up. He knew that the words were enough to make the man realize that this house, this former love nest of Alice and him, legally belonged to him. A few seconds later, the phone rang again, and this time, the voice on the other end of the line lost its previous arrogance and was replaced by alarm and panic. Jack didn't answer, just stood quietly in front of the window, a cold smile curling up at the corner of his mouth. This cold smile, like ice flowers knotted on a window in winter, was cold and sharp, signaling a storm of vengeance that was about to sweep in. The phone call is like a sharp knife that stabs Jack in the heart, revealing a truth he's been trying to avoid. Alice, his wife, the woman he once thought he'd spend the rest of his life with, has betrayed him. This heartbreaking discovery did not come out of nowhere. A few months earlier, Jack had gotten a vague sense that something was wrong. Alice came home later and later, often using overtime as an excuse, and was no longer as intimate with him as she used to be. But he chose to trust her in the years of affection between them. Until today, while sorting through old papers at home, he accidentally found an envelope hidden deep in a filing cabinet. The envelope contained several photographs of Alice snuggling intimately with a strange man, smiling sweetly. The man's arm was wrapped around Alice's waist, and Alice's head was resting on his shoulder. The intimacy between the two of them had long surpassed the boundaries of ordinary friends. On the back of the photo, in beautiful handwriting, it says, "Tom and Alice, forever love." At that moment, Jack felt like his world was spinning around, as if there was a big invisible hand, tightly choking his throat, making him unable to breathe. Shaking, he picked up his cell phone and looked through Alice's. Since Alice had always trusted him and never set up complicated passwords, even sometimes leaving her phone right where he could see it, he could easily view the contents of her phone. In recent weeks, Alice's cell phone has been flooded with texts and calls with a man named Tom, with ambiguous words and intimate tones. A revealing text message, like a sharp knife, lynched Jack's heart. One of the texts read, "Baby, I can't wait to see you. See you tonight at the usual place." Another reads, "Your husband, that idiot, doesn't know anything, ha ha ha." Jack felt like a fool being kept in the dark. Their conversation was almost like two fishy cats enjoying the stolen forbidden fruit. Anger burned in his chest, almost consuming him. He gripped the phone tightly, his knuckles white from the effort. But soon, Jack forced himself to calm down. He knew that anger and impulsiveness would only make things worse. He needed to calm down. He needed to think. He needed to make a plan. The seed of revenge took root quietly in his heart and grew and spread rapidly. For the next few days, Jack went to work as usual, came home for dinner, went to bed, and nothing seemed to have happened. But his brain didn't stop working for a moment. He's secretly watching Alice's every move, gathering evidence of her infidelity. He started following Alice's social media. Through her Facebook and Instagram, Jack realized that she and Tom were interacting more and more. They liked, commented under each other's dynamics, and even forwarded some ambiguous emoticons to each other. Alice would share photos of romantic-looking landscapes on Instagram, and Tom would comment underneath, "I want to go there with you." These seemingly insignificant interactions are like sharp knives in Jack's eyes, piercing his nerves. Since it never occurred to Alice that Jack would scrutinize her email, she never logged out after using it. Jack begins to keep an eye on Alice's email and realizes that there is a lot of email exchanges between her and Tom. The content of these emails is much more explicit and direct than text messages. They confide in each other, plan future trips, and even talk about how to get rid of Jack. Jack would secretly check Alice's cell phone and computer when she wasn't home. He didn't install any surveillance software or hire a private investigator. He simply took advantage of Alice's trust in him and her negligence in the security of her electronic devices. After each view, he carefully restored everything to its original state, leaving no trace. It's a mind game based on their years as a couple and their trust in each other. Throughout the process, Jack remained calm and restrained. He didn't rush to expose Alice or try to confront her. He knew that now was not the time. He needs to gather enough evidence to ensure that it can be used if necessary. These days, Jack was like a hunter lurking in the shadows, patiently watching his prey's every move, waiting for the perfect moment to hunt. He hid all his pain and anger under a calm exterior, and only in the dead of night would he sit alone in his study, going over the evidence over and over again, letting the flame of revenge burn brighter in his heart. He begins to analyze the evidence, thinking about how he can use it to exact revenge on Alice and Tom. He realizes that simply exposing their affair will not relieve him of his anger. He was going to make them pay a much worse price. He was going to make them lose everything, just like the pain he was going through right now. Jack began to recall their previous conversations. He remembered that at one point, Alice had overheard Tom mentioning that he worked for a company called Creation Media, which seemed to be quite a position. As for herself, she holds an important position in an advertising agency and has been responsible for the advertising planning of several well-known brands. These messages, which seemed like ordinary chatter at the time, are now the key to Jack's plan for revenge. He realizes that he can start through their workplace status and use their career and social image as a weapon of revenge. Thinking of this, the corner of Jack's mouth once again hooked up a cold smile. He knew that his plan for revenge was taking shape. He wants to make Alice and Tom pay a heavy price for their betrayal, and he wants to make them feel like they've lost their names and their families. He began to utilize his connections, and by talking to some of his peers and friends, he learned about Tom's specific position and job description at Creative Arts Media, as well as Alice's influence and connections in the ad agency. He learns that Tom is the creative director at Creative Media, where he is responsible for a number of the company's major projects, and that Alice is an account director at a well-known advertising agency, where she has her hands on a number of major clients. This information reinforces Jack's plan for revenge. He began to think about how he could use this information against them and how he could make them lose their reputation in the workplace. A month later, Jack had gathered enough evidence. He compiled this evidence into a detailed report, including photos, text message logs, email content, and records of Alice and Tom's interactions on social media. The report, like a ticking time bomb, could explode at any moment, blowing Alice and Tom to pieces. And Jack, he's the one who holds the trigger. He knew that his plan for revenge was about to begin. He wants to make Alice and Tom pay dearly for their betrayal, to show them that betrayal tastes far more bitter than they thought. The day finally came, and Jack sat down at his computer, took a deep breath, and hit send. His plan for revenge officially kicked off. He knew that from this moment on, he would no longer be the betrayed husband, but an avenger who would make his betrayer pay. This game of revenge has only just begun, and Jack, for one, is ready to give it his all. He knew that the game was going to be brutal, but he also knew that it was what he had to do. Only in this way could he reclaim the dignity that belonged to him, and could he find a hint of solace for his wounded heart. In his quest for revenge, he gradually realizes that he's not just getting back at Alice and Tom, he's rebuilding his life. Through this revenge, he wants to get back the confident, proud version of himself, the one who was once hopeful about life. This revenge is not just a punishment for his betrayer, but a redemption for himself. He knew that the road would be full of thorns, but he was ready for all the challenges. Because he knows that only by traveling this road can he truly let go of the past and truly start a new life. He believed that what awaited him at the end of his vengeance would be a new version of himself. After the email was sent, Jack turned off his computer, got up and walked to the window. Outside the window, the night was dark and the lights of the city twinkled like stars. He lit a cigarette and took a deep drag, the rush from the nicotine relaxing his taut nerves a little. For the past month, he spent the past month wandering the edges of his familiar life like a ghost, secretly gathering evidence of Alice and Tom's betrayal. And now that the curtain has risen on his revenge, he'll need to be calmer, more cautious. Jack realizes that revenge isn't just about venting his anger, it's about destroying Alice and Tom's lives once and for all, especially their roots in the workplace. He wanted them to taste what it was like to fall from great heights, to experience the despair of losing everything. And all of this requires a well-thought-out plan, one that can kill in one blow. Over the next few days, Jack began the second step of his revenge plan, preparing in secret. He knows that the photos and emails alone won't be enough to completely destroy Alice and Tom. He needs more and more substantial evidence, a real hammer that can bring about their demise in the workplace. He began to use his contacts, contacted some lawyers and investigators, and began a covert investigation. Instead of personally appearing, he made contact through an intermediary so that he could maximize his safety and avoid exposing his identity. First, Jack contacted a lawyer friend, David, who was well known in the legal profession. David, after carefully reviewing the evidence provided by Jack, tells him that while it may prove that Alice and Tom were having an affair, it does not legally constitute a fatal blow to their careers. They need to find more evidence of irregularities in their work, such as financial problems, business bribery, leaking company secrets, etc. David's words made Jack more clear about the direction of the investigation. He begins to investigate Tom and Alice's dirty laundry at work. Through a friend's introduction, he contacted a professional investigation organization and paid a considerable amount of money to commission them to conduct a covert investigation on Tom and Alice. The head of this investigation organization is a middle-aged man named Michael, who is experienced and skillful. After listening to Jack's account, Michael said that they needed more information about Tom and Alice, such as their workplaces, positions, daily schedules, social circles, and so on. Jack told Michael what he knew without reservation. He knew that he would have to trust the professionals to completely destroy Tom and Alice. He needs the help of Michael's team to uncover the secrets that lie beneath the surface. Over the next few weeks, Jack was a patient hunter, quietly waiting for his prey to fall into the trap. He goes to and from work and home as usual, keeping a superficial peace with Alice. He even takes an interest in Alice's work and asks her about her latest project, but his real goal is to get more information about Tom out of her. Meanwhile, Michael's investigative team is working feverishly. They investigated all aspects of Tom and Alice through various channels. They investigated Tom's finances at Creative Arts Media and found that there were some financial suspicions in several of the projects he handled, and there seemed to be a suspicion of embezzlement. They also investigated Alice's work at the advertising agency and found that she was too close to several clients, and that there was a potential for commercial bribery. Instead of making direct contact, Michael's team obtained information through indirect means in order to avoid alerting the public. They investigated some of the departed employees of Creative Arts Media and learned that Tom was not well regarded within the company, and that he often used his position of authority for his own personal gain. They also investigated some of the partners of Alice's advertising agency and learned that Alice often used some improper tactics in dealing with her clients, such as kickbacks and false promotions. Michael's team is like a pack of bloodhounds with a keen sense of smell, tracking every sign of Tom and Alice. They organize and analyze the information collected and report to Jack in a timely manner. As the investigation progresses, more and more evidence surfaces. Some of Tom's irregularities at Creative Arts Media are coming to light. He took advantage of his position to give his company's projects to companies in which he had an interest and received kickbacks from them. He is also suspected of misappropriating public funds for personal investments. And Alice's problems at the ad agency are gradually revealed. She took advantage of her position to accept bribes from clients to help them gain more benefits in advertising. She is also suspected of false advertising, exaggerating the effectiveness of advertisements and deceiving consumers. The evidence excites Jack, and he knows that his plan for revenge is coming together step by step. He begins to communicate more thoroughly with his attorney, David, about how to use this evidence to strike a fatal blow against Tom and Alice. David tells Jack that this evidence is enough to discredit Tom and Alice in the workplace. They can report their violations to Creative Media and Alice's advertising agency, as well as to the relevant regulatory authorities. Jack decides to do both. He wants to put Tom and Alice under pressure from both the company and the regulators. He began to prepare the report, listing Tom and Alice's violations in detail and attaching relevant evidence. Throughout this process, Jack has always maintained a high degree of discretion. He didn't tell anyone about this information, including his closest friends. He knew that once this game of revenge had begun, there could be no room for error. Any omission in any part of the program can lead to the failure of the entire program. In order to ensure the validity of the reporting material, Jack communicated with David several times and revised it repeatedly to ensure that it was flawless. They also discussed the timing and manner of reporting and decided to submit the report to the relevant authorities at the most appropriate time and in the most effective manner. Jack also considered the public opinion after the report. He contacted some media friends and prepared to expose Tom and Alice's scandal to the media at an appropriate time, utilizing the power of public opinion to deal a thorough blow to them. He is well aware that in this information age, the power of public opinion is immense, and once their scandals are exposed, their careers will come to a complete end. Once everything was ready, Jack chose the right time to submit his report to Creative Media and Alice's advertising agency, as well as to the relevant regulatory authorities. He also provided a portion of the evidence anonymously to several prominent media outlets and directed them to report on the story. After all this, Jack felt a sense of relief that he had never felt before. He knew that his revenge plan had entered the final stage, and next, he just needed to wait quietly for the result. Over the next few days, Jack kept a close eye on things. He went through various channels to find out the reaction of Creative Media Incorporated and Alice's advertising agency, as well as the progress of the regulator's investigation. He also keeps an eye on the media to see if the tide of public opinion is moving in the direction he expects. At the same time, he was prepared for all sorts of contingencies. He knew that Tom and Alice would find a way to fight back, and he had to be ready for them to do so. He is in close contact with David and is always ready to respond to any legal issues that may arise. This game of revenge is like a well-planned drama, and Jack is the director of this drama. He is in control of every detail, guiding the plot and waiting for the final climax to arrive. He knew that the game would soon be over, and Tom and Alice would pay dearly for their betrayal. And he, too, will have the ultimate victory in this game. Although this victory does not bring back his lost love and family, but at least it can give his wounded heart a touch of comfort, so that his broken life, a little redemption. The flame of vengeance, burning in his heart, he looked forward to that day, to the moment when he would see Tom and Alice completely broken. He knew that that moment would be the most important moment of his life and the beginning of his new life. With this revenge, he will put an end to his past life and then start a whole new one. Though the path may be full of thorns and challenges, he is ready to meet all of them, for he is no longer the same weak self he used to be, but a fire-breathed, stronger, and more daring new self. He believed that he would be able to overcome all the difficulties and find his own happiness. After all, life was still long, and he still had plenty of time to create his own excitement. Jack's whistleblower letter was like a heavy bomb, causing a furor within Creative Media and Alice's advertising agency, as well as with the relevant regulatory authorities. The ensuing media exposure has pushed the story even further into the limelight. For a while, the scandal about Tom and Alice was the center of industry and public debate. For Creative Media, Tom was the creative director of the company and was responsible for a number of important projects, and his scandal had a serious negative impact on the company's reputation. Company executives launched an internal investigation immediately after receiving the whistleblower letter. As the investigation progressed, more and more evidence pointed to Tom's violations. Companies that had a vested interest in Tom began to re-examine their projects with him, fearing they would be implicated. Meanwhile, Alice's advertising agency is in crisis. As an account director, Alice has her hands full with several large clients, and her scandal puts the company at risk of losing them. Clients who had worked closely with Alice began to question the firm's professionalism and integrity and demanded an explanation. Tom and Alice were further aggravated when regulators stepped in. They started to investigate Tom and Alice and asked them to provide relevant information and cooperate with the investigation. Tom and Alice were overwhelmed by the pressure from all sides. Jack was like a calm bystander, keeping a close eye on things. He went through various channels to find out the reaction of Creative Media and Alice's advertising agency, as well as the progress of the regulator's investigation. He also keeps a watchful eye on the media to ensure that the winds of public opinion are always blowing in the direction he expects them to. With Jack's careful planning, The media coverage of Tom and Alice's scandal grows more and more intense. Those truths that were once hidden from them are gradually being exposed to the public. The pressure of public opinion came in like a tidal wave and overwhelmed Tom and Alice. Within the company, Tom and Alice's situation was becoming increasingly difficult. Their coworkers started pointing and talking at them. Those who were once close to them began to distance themselves from them, fearing that they would be implicated. Tom tries to use his contacts at the company to his defense, but his efforts are in vain. His defense pales in the face of hard evidence. The trust of the company's executives in him was gone, and they began to think about how to deal with Tom in order to minimize the company's losses. Alice's situation is just as bad. Her position in the company is in tatters, and those who once flattered her now shun her. She lost the trust of her clients, the support of her coworkers, and her foothold in the company. Jack knows that his plan for revenge has had its initial success. Tom and Alice's foundations in the workplace have been shaken, and they begin to pay the price for their behavior. But Jack doesn't let his guard down. He knows that this is just the beginning. He's going to destroy their careers so completely that they'll never be able to turn around. So Jack took the next step. He used his contacts in the industry to spread the Tom and Alice scandal to more companies and partners. He wants the whole industry to know what they have done and to make them lose their reputation in the industry. Jack's actions paid off quickly. More and more companies began to disassociate themselves from Tom and Alice, canceling projects with them. Companies that had done business with them began investigating them as well, fearing they would be implicated. With Jack on their heels, Tom and Alice are caught between a rock and a hard place in the workplace. They lose the trust of the company, the support of their customers, and the recognition of the industry. Their careers, which were beginning to go to ruin. Creative media ultimately decided to fire Tom to quell the questions and pressures and to salvage the company's reputation. On the day he left the company, Tom walked out of the building like a defeated rooster. His former glory, his former honor, was in the past. Alice's fate was equally tragic. She was suspended from the company and investigated. Clients who she once considered to be cash cows have been terminating their contracts with her. Her status in the company was in tatters, and she became the object of everyone's scorn. Jack posted Tom and Alice's encounter in real time through anonymous social media accounts and anonymous emails. He skillfully utilized the power of social media to bring more attention to the event, which had a lasting impact on Tom and Alice's careers. Whenever there is a new development, Jack will be the first to release news and guide the direction of public opinion. The news spread like a virus across the internet, keeping the scandal of Tom and Alice alive. Watching Tom and Alice lose their way in the workplace fills Jack's heart with the thrill of revenge. He knew that his plan was coming together step by step. He wants Tom and Alice to feel the pain of the fall from grace. Tom and Alice's scandal became a hot topic of public debate as the media continued to focus on it. Their names became synonymous with negative press. Their photos, which have been repeatedly published by major media, have become the talk of the town after dinner. Jack's plan for revenge sweeps through Tom and Alice's careers like a well-planned storm. They are powerless in this storm and can only watch their careers go to ruin. This revenge is not only a punishment for Tom and Alice, but also a warning to those who betrayed them. Jack shows everyone that the price of betrayal is high and that no one can escape justice. Jack's plan for revenge continues as he seeks to destroy Tom and Alice's careers for good. He was going to make them pay dearly for their actions and make them live in remorse and pain for the rest of their lives. He, on the other hand, will continue to be a dispassionate bystander, enjoying the drama of revenge directed by his own hands. The end of this game, he knew, had long been predetermined. As Jack's plan for revenge advances, Tom and Alice's careers come crashing down. Tom was fired from Genesis Media and Alice was suspended from her job at the ad agency, leaving both of them in a state of disrepute and ruin. But that's only part of Jack's plan to destroy not only their careers, but their lives, their minds. After losing their jobs, Tom and Alice are like two dogs who have lost their jobs. Their attempts to find new job opportunities have been rejected. Those peers who used to call them brothers and sisters now shun them for fear of getting involved with them. Their names have become synonymous with negative terms in the industry and are shunned by all. In addition to the career blow, Tom and Alice's personal lives were in turmoil. Their social circles quickly disintegrated, and friends and acquaintances cut them off in droves. The praise and flattery that once surrounded them have now turned into cynicism and downward spiral. Their scandals became the talk of the public after dinner with continued media coverage. Their photos have been repeatedly published by major media, and their names have been compiled into various segments by netizens, which have been widely spread on the internet. They've become street rats, and everyone's out to get them. Faced with the double blows of career and life, Tom and Alice's psychological defense gradually collapsed. They started blaming each other, blaming each other, blaming each other for everything. What was once sweet and passionate has now turned into resentment and disgust. Alice is particularly distressed as she begins to realize that she has lost not only her job, but also the family she once loved, all because of a momentary lapse in judgment. She remembered the promise she had made to Jack, the little moments of happiness they had had, and the sweet, innocent child that she might now only be able to see by Jack's arrangement. Endless remorse and self-loathing gnawed at her mind like a viper. She began trying to contact Jack in hopes of gaining his forgiveness, even offering to get back together if she could just see her kids once in a while. She kept calling and sending messages to Jack, expressing her remorse and pain, but Jack never responded. He knew that Alice's tears and confessions were not because she really recognized her mistake, but because she couldn't bear the pain and stress she was feeling right now. Jack doesn't go soft, and he continues to fight Alice's financial and social image through legal means. He hired a team of professional lawyers to conduct a detailed investigation into Alice's assets during the marriage and discovered some of her unjust enrichment. Using this evidence, Jack filed a lawsuit in court against Alice for his damages and disinherited her from a portion of the property. This series of blows left Alice in utter despair. She lost her job, her friends, her family, and her possessions. She was like a shell with her soul drained, and spent her days in tears and a trance. After being bombarded with phone calls and messages that Jack ignores, Alice's emotions finally get out of control. She began cursing at Jack over the phone, accusing him of callousness and threatening to die with him. But these threats and abuse mean nothing to Jack anymore. He was no longer the weak man who let people bully him, but a ruthless avenger. To get rid of Alice for good, Jack changed his cell phone number, moved out of his former residence, and filed a restraining order prohibiting Alice from approaching him and his children in any way. He's going to completely cut off all contact with Alice so she can never hurt him or the baby again. Faced with Jack's determination, Alice was completely devastated. She lost all hope and fell into deep despair. She started drinking and getting high, trying to numb her pain with alcohol and drugs. Her body and mind quickly collapsed into an inhuman form, and Tom, hit by both the loss of his job and Alice, has hit a low point in his life. He tries to make a fresh start, but his past is like a heavy burden that he can't get rid of. He couldn't find a job, had no source of income, and had to eke out a living on his former savings. He began to reflect on his life and his mistakes. He realized that his own greed and lust had ruined everything for him. He lost his career, his love, and his dignity. He became a total loser, a marginalized social outcast. Tom has also tried to reach out to Alice, hoping to get some comfort and support from her. But he realizes that Alice is too far gone to help him. The relationship between them has long existed in name only, leaving a pile of broken memories and endless regret. Tom and Alice's lives come crashing down under Jack's careful planning. They lost their careers, their love, their friends, and their hope for life. They are like two small boats destroyed by a storm, drifting in the ocean of life, unable to find their way or see the future. Jack's plan for revenge reaches its climax. In an almost cruel way, he knocked Tom and Alice from the peak of their lives to the bottom, making them taste the suffering and pain of the human world. He used their pain to avenge his own wounds and put an end to his past. However, the thrill of revenge didn't last long. Looking at the tragic situation of Tom and Alice, Jack's heart began to surge with complex emotions. He began to wonder if it was really worth it, if he could really bring true relief to himself. He began to think about the meaning of revenge and the value of life. He realizes that revenge will not bring back the love and family he lost, nor will it truly heal his broken heart. He won the revenge game, but he paid a heavy price. He lost who he once was and became a ruthless avenger. He filled his heart with hate, but he also lost the ability to feel love and warmth. These reflections have left Jack in a deep daze. He doesn't know what his future path is going to be or how he's going to face his new life. All he knew was that he needed time. Time to digest it all. Time to find answers. At the end of his revenge, Jack did not feel the joy of victory, but fell into a deeper emptiness and loneliness. He was like a king standing in ruins, with supreme power, but also without all joy. He begins to understand that revenge is only a temporary relief, and that true salvation needs to be found within himself. Only by letting go of hatred can we truly embrace the future and truly begin a new life. And all of this takes time, courage, and wisdom. Jack stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his high-rise apartment, overlooking the familiar city. Night had long since fallen, and the city was abuzz with lights and traffic. However, this bustling scene could not dispel the emptiness and loneliness within him. A few months ago, his own plan for revenge finally destroyed Alice and Tom for good. They lost their careers, their honor, their dignity, and their hope for life. Alice has completely given up on herself, addicted to alcohol and drugs, and her life is completely derailed and ruined. Tom, on the other hand, was saddled with heavy debt and psychological stress and disappeared from the public eye, with no one knowing where he had gone or what kind of life he was leading. On a legal level, Alice also paid for her behavior. Jack won the lawsuit, and Alice not only had to compensate him for his financial losses, but also lost her rights to some of the property. She became a real loser, a marginalized social outcast. For Jack, this revenge was certainly a success. In an almost brutal way, he makes Alice and Tom pay a terrible price for the pain and despair he once experienced. He won the game and became the final victor. However, the triumph of vengeance did not bring him the joy and relief he expected. Instead, he was filled with emptiness and confusion. Instead of feeling happy about the destruction of Alice and Tom, he finds himself in a deeper loneliness. He begins to reflect on his act of vengeance and what that vengeance means. He realized that while revenge had relieved him of a moment's anger, it hadn't really allowed him to let go of the past or achieve true inner peace. He filled his heart with hate, but he also lost the ability to feel love and warmth. In the course of his revenge, he becomes a ruthless executioner, destroyer who only knows how to destroy. He has lost the person he once was, the person who was once kind, forgiving, and hopeful about life. He realizes that revenge is a double-edged sword, hurting others as well as himself. This reflection left him pained and confused. He doesn't know what his future path is going to be or how he's going to face his new life. He was like a traveler standing at a crossroads, lost and unsure of where to go. In search of answers, Jack decides to leave the city of memories. He sold his apartment, quit his job, and took his kids and left the Heartbreak. He needs a whole new environment, a place where no one knows him, to start his life over. He took his children to a remote seaside town, rented a small house, and lived like a hermit. He played with the child every day, taught him to read and write, and took him for walks on the beach. He tries to heal his broken heart through this simple and peaceful life. In the process, he gradually let go of his hatred and his obsession with the past. He begins to understand that true redemption comes not from revenge, but from forgiveness and letting go. Only by letting go of hatred can we truly embrace the future and truly begin a new life. He begins to try to reconcile with Alice and Tom, even though this reconciliation no longer makes any practical sense. He contacted Alice through her attorney and offered to waive some of his claims against her, and hoped that she would be able to get back on her feet and start a new life. He also tries to find out what happened to Tom in the hope that he can give him some help to start over. However, he has not received a response to these efforts. Alice is still drowning in her own misery and can't get out of it. Tom, on the other hand, has vanished without a trace. Jack realizes that some people, some things, once missed, can never be undone. He can't change the fate of Alice and Tom, nor can he change his own past. The only thing he can do is to accept the reality let go of the past, and face the future bravely. During his time in the seaside town, Jack gradually found his inner peace. He began to study painting, music, and everything that ever interested him. He realized that there were many good things in life besides hate that were worth pursuing and cherishing. He also grew closer to his children. He began to understand the child's inner feelings and began to listen to the child. He realized that his children were the most precious gift in his life and the hope for his future life. In the company of his children, Jack gradually recovers his former self, the one who is kind, tolerant, and full of hope for life. He begins to understand that the meaning of life is not in revenge, but in love and hope. Only love can dispel the gloom of hatred. Only hope can light the way to the future. A few years later, Jack returned to his old city with his children. He is no longer the vengeful man blinded by hate, but a mature, wise, and loving father. He resumed his new career with success. He has written a book about his experiences, telling the story of revenge and redemption. Through this book, he hopes to warn those blinded by hatred of the cost of revenge and the importance of forgiveness and letting go. The book has generated a great deal of response, and many people have gained insights from it. They begin to reflect on their lives and their relationships with others. They begin to understand that hatred only brings suffering, while love and forgiveness bring true happiness. Jack's life was changed by this book. He became a well-known author, a spiritual mentor, and a guide to help people out of difficult situations. He has used his experiences to influence more and more people to find direction and meaning in their lives. In the end, Jack found his own happiness. He lived a peaceful and happy life with his children, enjoying the good things in life. He knew that he had completely stepped out of the shadow of vengeance and gained true redemption. His life, too, was made more complete and meaningful by this revenge. He understands that the end of vengeance is not destruction, but new life. Only by letting go of hatred can we embrace the future. Only by forgiving others can we free ourselves. And all of this is a valuable life lesson that he has learned at a terrible cost. He will always remember this experience and use it to brighten his future path and the hearts of many others. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.